You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Denisha Richard. Well, 2 weeks down in the new session for the Kansas State Legislature, and joining me today is Senate President Ty Masterson. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
So 2 weeks down in the Kansas State Legislature, and there's been a lot going on already. How do you think the progress has been so far?
Well, from my perspective, we call it feel like a herd of turtles. we get it, and then the governor's state of the state gets backed up. So you generally, it comes in like a whirlwind, but this one feels a little slow, like a slow start.
Now, in the first week of legislature last year, you told Capitol reporter Rebecca Chung that the two main things that you all wanted to focus on, or you per se, was redistricting and also the budget. Those were the two largest issues that you wanted to focus on. So fast forward to this year, I know you all the GOP has released their priorities for the legislature this session, but what are the two top things and issues that you all want to make sure you put to the top this session?
No, that's a good question, and probably the top two. I mean, we have an agenda. Top two, one would just be school choice. We want to give parents and students choice. We know that's a tough subject in this, with divided government, it's tough, but we really are advocates for the parents, and I think COVID revealed to us the need for that. And when you saw a lot of this stay-at-home attempts at learning, and I think our parents need choice. That's probably number one. Number two is tax. And I was pleasantly surprised that the governor came out. Republicans have pushed for lower taxes on retirement for quite a while, so that's part of it. And I think I'm optimistic. I think there might be a vein looking at what the options are with food and retirement tax. We would love to see tax flatter, simpler, lower. So I think those are probably the top two. Those are big hurdles, but those are the top two.
So of course, yes, everyone's talking about taxes, but one other thing that everyone's talking about in the state of Kansas is, and I'm sure you've heard it before, medical marijuana.
Sure.
And of course, you have said in the past that that's not really a priority of yours, but of course, research shows that it's a priority for Kansans. So with it having a new slate for this session, do you think that there's a possibility for a change of agenda or a change of heart for you to possibly at least consider the possibility of medical marijuana becoming legal in the state of Kansas?
Well, first I'm going to have to push back on your premise that the research shows it's a priority for Kansas. It just depends what you're asking for. But
they want it. They want it, though.
So you say they, right? And who is they? You see polls and what it means between medical or recreational. And so what do you mean by medical? I think if what you mean by medical is actually legitimate medicine and tied to legitimate illness and delivered in a legitimate way, I think the answer to that question is yes, there is a conversation. With what's gone in Oklahoma, the quadruple homicide on the marijuana farm, and they're overproducing. I had a conversation with their AG. They're overproducing what they need for their license by 85%. Now they're big suppliers of the black market. And so that's not what we're looking for. So I think if you can get down to dosage and delivery and figure that out, because I think I would agree with you that they do want to have an option for when it comes to maybe palliative care, right? Opioid addiction, those are fair. And so the conversation's not over. I think Kansas, if you frame it in the way of legitimacy, I think there's a conversation.
Stay with us. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics here with Senate President Ty Masterson. We'll be right back.
Your table awaits at the Blind Tiger Brewery and Restaurant.
Premium food at affordable prices is our commitment to you.
With a wide variety of choices, there's something for everyone.
Steak, pasta, seafood, and barbecue, with plenty of space to bring the whole family for a delicious meal.
Serving Topeka great food to family and friends for many years.
From my family and all of us here at the Blind Tiger, come join us today.
If you get spoiled by the taste, blame us. Blind Tiger Brewery and Restaurant, 37th in Kansas.
Mental health is about emotional health and brain health.
Healthy children and families, and a healthy Kansas.
Go to acmhck.org to find your local community mental health center.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm excited to announce my original My Slippers are back in stock. You've made them a huge success, and now I've added smaller sizes, larger sizes, wide sizes, and all new colors. And with your promo code, you still save $90 a pair. Not only that, I'm having the biggest closeout sale ever on our sandals and slides for as low as $19.98. What makes my slippers different is my exclusive 4-layer design that you're not going to find in any other slippers. My slippers' patented layers make them ultra comfortable, extremely durable, and they help reduce stress on your feet. Wear them anytime, anywhere. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen now. Use your promo code to save $90 on my original My Slippers, or for as low as $19.98, you can get our sandals or slides. Quantities won't last long, and with my 60-day money-back guarantee, you can rest assured they'll be the most comfortable footwear you'll ever own.
The stories you need to know.
They just ripped the ATM out of the wall.
Up in a Black Hawk helicopter.
Were you trying to rip me off?
Inside Edition.
These are the stories that impact your life.
Weekdays at 2 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. Continuing our conversation with Senate President Ty Masterson again. Thank you again for joining me today. We already know about the constitutional amendment that value them both. And Kansans, they agreed that Kansans should have the constitutional right for an abortion in the state of Kansas. But it seems like the conversation just keeps happening. We had a bill introduced to give local governments the opportunity to restrict abortion. I mean, do you not think that Kansans just want this to be done and over with?
Well, to answer the question directly, I don't think. And even the way the question was phrased to me about this is what they said, we had rallies in the Capitol with a lot of people that were voting against valuing them both because it wasn't an all-out restriction. So to read that the way it was read in the media, it's interesting to me. And the problem really isn't that. It comes down to the Hodes decision, which was the Supreme Court decision that they attached this broad sense of autonomy, which has all kinds of implications with no reference to the autonomy of the unborn, right? If someone murders a pregnant woman, that's a double homicide. And so what we'd like to see answered, what I'd like to see answered by the Supreme Court is when does the young lady in utero receive her autonomy? And so that question is not unanswered. The most extreme view in polling of abortion is actually the Democratic Party view that unrestricted abortion clear up to the moment of birth, and you're seeing in some radical cases even beyond that. And so that's the most radical. That is less popular than a ban with the restriction, with the exceptions, right? Rape, incest, life of the mother. That's even more radical than that. It's less popular. That is the most radical view of abortion, is the unrestricted. And so I think what's been read into that isn't really correct.
So what are you saying, that you want to educate the Kansas people again? I mean, because the votes already showed. No, it's not educate people. It's because what happens with that decision, which was strict scrutiny. So right now, even what Planned Parenthood called common sense restrictions in our code, right? Parental notification, other things that are there, like clinic licensure, their cleanliness, those are actually presumptively unconstitutional under that decision under strict scrutiny. So really, the goal is to make sure those common sense restrictions that even Planned Parenthood supposedly agrees with remain, because right now that's all under attack. And so you don't think that Kansans just want the constitutional right to abortion and that's what they voted for? I think most Kansans don't believe there's a constitutional right. That is a radical Supreme Court decision that diverged from all court history. Let's talk about the word woke. All right. So that was brought up during a recent press conference. A reporter asked you and other legislators how you all define the word woke. And there were different answers given that day. Do you think that is still the name that you want to describe what you all are working against? Or is there maybe another word that you could use to describe the fight towards what you guys, the left? I mean, if you're asking about another word for woke that you're fighting against, I'd say it comes down to activism, probably more particularly radical progressive activism. That's what woke is. I mean, what woke is to me, and it's trying to reframe history. It's trying to focus on things that are, pick at the gender identity movements, a lot of what's happening in our schools and society, even some of the Black Lives Matter movement. What I struggle there. That is an absolutely true statement, Black Lives Matter. But that is a group that has a radical progressive agenda that not even all Black lives mattered to, right? You didn't care about black conservatives, right? And so it's
it's that radical agenda that I think we're battling against, because I think to a large degree it's destroying this country.
Well, I think with Black Lives Matter, it is necessarily geared towards fighting the oppression that especially black men and women have faced when coming into contact with law enforcement. That was really the basis
Which is fair.
of that organization. And I think sometimes the Black Lives Matter movement can be described as different, but that is the original basis of the movement. But I do understand what you mean about the word woke and what you all are fighting against, but it seems like that is not really clearly defined, though. So how can you fight against something that's not really clearly defined?
I think they don't clearly define it by intention, right? You try to, you hide behind a mask, right? So you hide.
But it's your word. It's your word. You say woke ideology.
Right, no, but you're the one that then takes it as ambiguous. I told you it's radical progressive activism. Is that not well defined?
To you. You said to you.
You asked me for that, right? You asked me for a word to how that defines, and that's how I define it.
So what does the Kansas GOP define it as a collective?
I think they would agree with the radical progressive activism. I can't imagine anybody that wouldn't agree with that statement.
Is there anything that you would want to change that you've done in past legislatures that you would like to do this time around? Anything different you would like to do?
Well, when you look back, hindsight's always 20/20, and there's decisions you would have made to help build strong coalitions. And so those are, it's management relationships. So that's what, as a position of the president, that's the most difficult thing is, it's almost like a family. I can't fire anybody that's there. I have 40 colleagues, and the best of my ability, I want to try to get along with all 40 of them and see what, they all are there for, they all want to do something bigger than themselves. And my goal is to try to help them accomplish that.
All right, well, you just heard from Senate President Ty Masterson. We wanted to thank him for joining us today.
For more than 34 years, Shorey Automotive has proudly served the Topeka area with knowledgeable, reliable, and honest repair and service. We're honored to serve our veterans, active duty service members, and first responders. Shorey Automotive, providing you with value for your repair or service dollar.
Doughboys Pizzeria, now with 2 locations in Topeka. Serving fresh pizza with our signature sauce, award-winning wings, awesome appetizers and desserts, with outdoor dining and entertainment. Call or order online at doughboys.pizza.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Denisha Richard. You may have just heard Senate President Ty Masterson talk more about priorities in the legislature. One of the top 2 he mentioned, school choice, but the term has caused a lot of conversation among Kansans, which actually leads to the question, what is really best for Kansas students? Will the choice to attend any school be deemed best for them? Will that work best for Kansas students? Joining me now are 2 advocates who are for and against school choice. We have Ann Ma with the Kansas School Board of Education and Michael Alston with Americans for Prosperity. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So, of course, this has started a large conversation among legislators, parents, educators, everyone who's got something to say about it, right? What is the pro and the advocate side for how much school choice will cost for Kansas students? Does it save districts money? What does it actually mean for the cost of school?
Well, first off, thank you, Denisha, so much for having me on Inside Kansas Politics. It's always great to be here. When it comes to school choice and we're talking about costs, I think we have to be a bit specific, because if we're talking about, let's say, the cost to the state government budget, the cost is actually 0. If we're focusing on, let's say, the cost to Kansas parents and Kansas families, well, then we need to look at the studies and the data. And there have been research studies that have looked at school choice programs in many different states across the country and tried to see whether it has generated savings or cost parents extra money. And the answer is no. We actually found that the majority of the studies that were looking at school choice actually found they generated savings for Kansans. I believe it was 68 studies out of about 73. And in fact, one of those positive studies was even looking here in Kansas at the low-income tax credit scholarship.
And do you agree?
Absolutely not. I don't know what studies Michael was looking at, but he sure wasn't looking at Kansas, because just last year alone, if you look at I think there were about 1,300 students that took advantage. It cost the public schools more than $10 million in lost funding. And there are more than one way that this costs. For example, this year, I mean, we can just rip the Band-Aid off this one. It's all about the money. They have a bill coming up this week for a hearing that allows a 100% tax credit. Who's ever heard of a 100% tax credit for people who donate to these private school scholarships? So if I give $10,000 to a school, I get a $10,000 tax break. Now, who do you think that really benefits? But the cost to rural schools is huge, because let's say I had a family of 3 who left a small school, and it's the schools like in Osage and Jefferson County that really have to worry about this. But let's say I had a 3rd, a 5th, and an 8th grader, and I took them to a private school in Topeka. That could well cost that small school in Jefferson County $25,000 to $30,000, but it doesn't save them a dime. They don't save any teachers, they don't save any buses, they don't save anything. And that's a cost of the school districts. That's exactly why Oklahoma rejected school vouchers, because of the high cost, particularly to rural schools. But the cost to students is even greater, because this is a promise that's never kept. The poorest income students are never able to take advantage of this, and that's why they're upping the ante in this bill I'm talking about, from just free and reduced lunch students to 250% of poverty. So a family making $65,000 or $70,000 could take advantage of this.
I think it's really important.
So let's quit pretending this is about just helping poor kids get to schools, because the poorest kids could never take advantage of it. And the worst part is that school choice is exactly that. The schools get to choose,
and
not
that
the
was
kids.
a great answer, but the only problem is that you spoke about vouchers. What we're talking about here in Kansas in terms of school choice programs has nothing to do with vouchers.
It's the same thing, Michael.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
vouchers has where money follows the private school district or public school district. What we're talking about here is funding students instead of the school system. And then if you want to talk about data, or if you want to talk about the money lost from the school districts, that had nothing to do with low-income tax scholarship. That had to do with the fact that schools were being closed and parents decided they wanted another option, or parents didn't like what was being taught to their children at such a young age and they wanted another option. And most importantly, when we're talking about low-income tax scholarship, right, we're actually talking about generating savings, the actual research study that showed that it actually happened. Now, it's not really a left issue or versus a right issue, or Republican versus Democrat. The studies have shown all across the state. Pick a state that has some sort of school choice program and I'll most certainly provide you with the study. But parents across the board want more choice and more options for their children, because that's what they know is best for their children in their lives.
Not really. What Kansas parents want is strong public schools. And that's
what Kansas parents want is
Michael,
not for unions to tell them what they want to do.
Let's have Ann. You can go ahead, since Michael, you just finished.
It's typical they would blame so much stuff on unions, but our teachers are great, and parents know our teachers are great, and our public schools are great. But you can call it a voucher, you can call it a scholarship. It has the same impact on kids and the same impact on public schools.
We're going to finish this conversation. I know you both have a lot to say, so we're going to be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics. Of course, we're talking more about school choice. We'll be right back.
Car wrecks don't just happen from 9 to 5. If you're in a wreck, we're available 24/7.
Don't wait until tomorrow to get the help you need now. In a wreck, need a check?
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 431-0000.
The Storm Track Weather Cam Network on 27 News. More cameras covering your community, providing a live, exclusive look at weather as it rolls across northeast Kansas.
We're watching the storms building in from the south and southwest.
Working for you to provide advance warning of changing conditions. The Storm Track Weather Cam Network. Available live to you anytime, online and on the 27 News mobile app. Sponsored by Prairie Band Casino and Resort.
Car wrecks don't just happen from 9 to 5. If you're in a wreck, we're available 24/7.
Don't wait until tomorrow to get the help you need now. In a wreck, need a check?
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 431-0000.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Denisha Richard. We are continuing our conversation on school choice. We have gotten pretty heated with our conversation on what school choice actually means for Kansans. And I think a lot of conversation also floats around, is it richer schools versus lower income schools? What does this actually mean? So a lot of Kansans may think that, you know, with students being removed en masse from the districts that have the lower income schools, and then we have the districts that of course are in higher income neighborhoods, what happens to those schools where those students are being removed from? How can that affect them? Michael, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Well, first off, I think that this entire conversation has really been about, as I said before, not left versus right, but really parents versus those who think that they know better than parents, against those who think that they know their children better than their own parents. And I think that that's an idea that's honestly insulting. But to get to your question, when we're talking about what happens with schools, I think it depends on the program. But what we're also seeing is that at least with the bill that's being considered here in Kansas, it wants to benefit both the students that stay and the students that decide to go. Research studies have shown that if you decide to put education freedom in a particular state, test scores for both the students that remain and the students that decide to go seem to grow appreciably. Not only that, you see wages grow up for teachers, you see parents have a better satisfaction. The only people who are upset are those who are afraid that their power is going to be diminished.
I think that's just a bunch of hooey. I'd like to see that study because there's absolutely no evidence that low-income kids actually do any better.
I provided 7.
In these private schools than they do in public schools. You know, we have some great public schools here, and what parents want, they're not crying for these voucher scholarship programs, and the money does go to the school. It's not supporting, I mean,
that is not true.
We don't, the bill you're proposing may send the money straight to the parents so they can maybe go buy a latte machine.
Don't insult parents. Don't insult the parents.
I'll show you the video. Anyway, what we need here and what parents are asking for is strong public schools. You know, I've heard you know, American Prosperity say that what we need here is competition, that will be good. And what I want to show you is, this is a list of things that have been added to the scope of what public schools have to do the last 50 years. And the list of things they have to do is mighty. These are not things that private schools are saddled with. And when the private schools are interested in doing things like special education or remedial training, then maybe we have something to talk about. But right now, they have none of the responsibilities, but they want the money that would follow the kids. And to break the kneecaps of public schools so that private schools can prosper more just doesn't make any sense.
This is not a public versus a private. This could be a public versus a public. This could be a private versus a private, a homeschool versus a homeschool. Because what the point is that we're not here to support a system over another. I know it makes it easy for the debate, but it's not the truth.
No, we're not talking about systems, we're talking about community schools. The reality is that parents want the money to choose what's best for their child. And you know what? They do want strong public schools, as long as it guarantees a great education for their child. That list that you brought there, that burdens me. Why would schools have to do all that type of work just to make sure that children are doing well? When you look at school spending over the past, 10 years, it's gone up 11%. Teacher salaries have fallen by 9%. You want to poo-poo competition, but we all know competition is what really helps customers get better off, and the same thing is true in the labor market. If you want competition in the labor market, you'll also see teachers' salaries rise as well. The only thing that's the problem here is those who think that we want to defund public schools. It's just the typical talking points from Americans for Prosperity and the
These are talking points from parents.
And the billionaires that back them. But what parents want is strong public schools. And if we really want to give every kid a fighting chance, then let's give the kids in public schools the same advantages that private schools have. Smaller classrooms, better wages. You know, these things can all be done, but not if you funnel money off the top and give it to private schools. Segregation, school vouchers, scholarships, whatever you want to call it, increases segregation. And
that is not true.
And there is absolutely no evidence that any
One second, Michael. We'll let Anthony, we'll let you talk more about that.
There's no evidence that this actually works, that if you take kids, the good performing kids, and put them off in private schools, that the scores of both go up. That boggles the mind that even works.
In my pocket right here, I have a book with about 20 different citations of either integration in schools increasing because of school choice and education freedom, of test scores improving, and of course, as I said before, of teachers being well off. But one point I really want to get at, and I think it's a bit insulting, is when we talk about segregation, school zones are segregation. School zones that we have right now that are limiting students from leaving from one area to another simply because of where they live has been used by white supremacists back in the 60s, and it's a relic of a bygone era that still exists with us today. When we're talking about education freedom, and I'm not talking about vouchers, I'm talking about an education savings account, we're talking about giving those luxuries and opportunities that the wealthy have today to low-income and middle-income families.
And what we know is...
And you can wrap it up. Go ahead.
None of those that he's talking about, those vouchers are not enough to help the lowest.
I'm not talking about vouchers. Stay on topic,
scholarships,
please. Stay on topic, please.
Tomato, Michael. Quit interrupting me.
Well, stay on topic and I won't.
And you can finish your subject. Michael, let's let Ann finish.
I will.
While we
That
wrap
would
it
be
up.
terrific. I've heard so many talking points, cue words here, but none of it has to do with Kansas. In Kansas, they are proposing a tax credit scheme that skirts the intent of our Constitution for strong public schools. And we are not going to help our public schools a bit by skimming money off the top, by enticing kids away from our public schools when at this time they need our support. We should be addressing the problem, not ignoring the problem. And school vouchers, scholarships, savings accounts, whatever you want to call them, ignore the problem of poverty and equity in our schools. And we can address that. We can give every kid a fighting chance by making sure we have the best quality public schools and not trying to hurt them.
Okay, well, I want to thank you both. You both had great topics to talk about, and I love the discourse between the two of you. Of course, we have Michael Alston with Americans for Prosperity for school choice here today, and we have Ann Ma with the Kansas Board of Education. She is against school choice. Large conversation, and of course, the conversation will continue also on the Kansas State Legislature. Well, of course, that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at @InKansasPolitics. Of course, I'm sure you want to see more. We'll post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for our past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas State legislators to hear, let us know. We'll see you here, same time, same place, next Sunday.